What is manhood and how does it relate to individuality? Emerson wrote an essay called Self-Reliance, and it's something that will bring you back to a different time in America. It's written in the mid 19th century. It's a time where television wasn't around, social media wasn't around, communities were small, the country was just getting itself started. Yet when you read some of the things that Emerson is talking about in this essay, you realize that the things that he is saying still relate to the situation that we live in the modern world. And I think that that's one of the most powerful indicators of a truly great book or a truly great essay, is that it could have been written hundreds or maybe even thousands of years ago. But when you read it in the modern era, the ideas that it's discussing and the solutions that it's theorizing still make sense today, even though Emerson is writing this in a society that's drastically different from the one that we live in 2025. Somehow when you read this, it still makes sense, and you can see how it still applies to the life that we live in the modern world. So the essay Self-Reliance is essentially an essay on the power of individuality. The power of individuality that's so powerful it's impossible to analyze, it's impossible to measure. And the way that he describes it is that when you encounter somebody who is truly living out a life that you can tell is coming from within them and not being influenced from without them, there's something so beautiful and so inspiring about those types of people. Self-Reliance talks about manhood in a very unique way that's extremely applicable to 2025. To Emerson, manhood is individuality. There's a few lines in Emerson's essay that are very impactful. He says that your genuine actions will explain themselves, but your conformity explains nothing. To Emerson, conformity is the death of man. And he says that society is in a constant conspiracy against the manhood of its members. We're constantly being pressured to act certain ways, to not offend people with certain words, to speak a certain way, to act a certain way, in extreme cases, to think a certain way. But Emerson says that as soon as you start to conform to the way that society wants you to act, you are giving away your manhood, and you are becoming a shadow of the person that you could become had you rather lived from within instead of from without. And that's the distinction that Emerson is making in this essay, is that for us to be true men, we have to live from within. Emerson's essay on self-reliance is something that, when you read it, inspires you to really reflect on why you do the things that you do. Why do I go to the places that I go? Why do I hang out with the people who I hang out with? Why do I like the things that I like? Do I actually enjoy these things, or is this just something that has been put into my head because of the society that I live in, the people that I grew up around, the culture that I was born into? Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And do I want to keep doing them? This moment of reflection is really important for people. And I think that when you arrive at a point in your life where you start to reflect very deeply on your habits, your interests, the things that you like, you start to challenge yourself, to challenge your own identity. And through that challenge, through that tension that's created by challenging your own identity, you have the opportunity to create an entire new identity for yourself, to blossom into something that perhaps you were supposed to become the whole time, but society conformed you into something that didn't serve you. And that's one of the most powerful exercises, or one of the most powerful moments that I believe can come out of reading an essay like Emerson's Self-Reliance, is an extreme reflection on our identity as men, as human beings, as members of our society, thinking about why we do the things that we do. And if we can't come to a conclusion that makes sense as to why we're doing something, to have the courage, to have the will, to have the care to change that and to become somebody else who is actually the product of inventive reason and not conforming to society. You know, reading Emerson's essay in 2025 is especially important because of the sheer amount of propaganda that we're exposed to every single day. You know, it used to be that you would conform to the religious traditions or the cultural trends, maybe the local trends of the town that you lived in. But with social media, in our sheer consumption of not only digital media, but personalized digital media, a feed that's generated by an algorithm to give us exactly what we want and what it knows we will continue to consume. We're exposing our minds to a level of conformity, a risk of conformity that's never before existed on planet Earth. When we're using social media, we have to always think about the fact that these platforms that we use want us to use them habitually. They want us to become addicted, then that makes us a valuable user. It generates a lot of data for these companies, and that's the perfect consumer. So we have to think that these platforms, as powerful as they are machines for conformity. They'll feed us fears, they'll feed us anxieties to get us to feel a certain way so they can make us do certain things. And we have to constantly keep it on our minds that we have to live from a series of principles that exist within us and not from the influences that exist without us. Every single man has to have a set of rules that he lives by, a set of principles, a set of things that he decides to say no to. We can't be yes men. If we just go out and say yes to everything, then all we're going to become is a puppet for the culture that we live in. And that's unfortunately the culture of consumerism. Read Emerson's essay, Self-Reliance. Decide for yourself what's important to you, what's valuable to you, how do you want to live your life? And then have the courage to actually go out into the world and live that every single day.